Hi, I'm Midge Shoemaker, and today is day 44 of my doing 100 days of YouTube videos and focusing on recognizing God's hand in my life. So, yay for day 44. Today was actually a pretty good day, sort of. It had its really good moments and its not so good moments. Mostly, I'm just really tired because I did not get a lot of sleep. I have not learned to consistently turn the volume off on my phone when I go to bed at night. Or when I go to bed in the mornings when everybody else is getting up, which I have a tendency to do a lot. So other people have a tendency to call me or text me, and I think it's insanely early hours, and I can't imagine why anybody would be texting before 7 o'clock in the morning. Personally, I don't understand why anybody would be texting or sending anything to anyone before 10 o'clock in the morning. Although when I was growing up, the rule was you don't call anybody before 9 or after 9 p.m. So it's kind of like a 9 to 9, a 12-hour period. Unless, of course, you knew they were awake because they had to go to work or something. Because people had to get ready and go to work or go to school or do whatever. So you didn't call them, especially in the summertime, before 9 in the morning or after 9 p.m. unless it was like an emergency. So, like, my brain is still kind of stuck there somehow. So I have a hard time reaching out to people after 9 o'clock at night, even though I know they're still awake, and I'm definitely still awake. But I understand that as, a sign of respect. But that's obviously not what everybody else was taught. So I ramble, sidetrack, has nothing to do with recognizing God's hand in my life today. It's just that Dad Shoemaker texted me at like 6:45 this morning, and I woke up to the text and I was like, what do you want? And then I couldn't go back to sleep because my mind was spinning of all the things I was going to do today or wanted to do today or needed to do today. Not that any of it got done or not that any of it was even that important. It's just what my brain does when I wake up. What are we going to do today? And I was like, go back to sleep because we've had 3 hours of sleep. And my brain's like, oh, that's funny, huh? Not very nice when it does that. So, but I was grateful because I did get to talk to him, tell him about my new job, and he offered to let me use his car for the next 2 weeks. So I'm like, yay! I don't know how I'm going to pay for gas to take his car to and from work for the next 2 weeks, and I don't know what I'm going to do for transportation after that, but at least I know how I'm going to get it to work for the next 2 weeks. So I'm like, yay, I can do that. So I am grateful for that at this point, and that's not all I have. My brain just froze for a second. I apologize. This is why I need someone to edit my videos so they can edit out all of my little apologies and my brain freezes. Or I need to go back through and edit them all out. Something like that. Anyway, back on track today. My aunt took me to my physical therapy today, which was very kind of her. And then she took me to get Dad Shoemaker's car so I could have it for the next 2 weeks. So that was also fantastic of her. But she asked me about my car and the car accident and the attorney. And so she's given me another option, another attorney's name to talk to them and see if they can't be of a little bit more assistance in my situation. And I was like, ooh, that would be very nice, because I remember years ago when I was a bus driver and got in a car accident that someone was saying, oh, you should get an attorney, because I had an attorney and they gave me like $5,000 up front before any of the stuff was settled or anything else like that. And I was like, that would have been nice, but I was like, I'm good, and I didn't do it at that time. And right now that would be super nice because I'm just like, but the attorney I have doesn't do that. He's kind of, I don't know. I guess his fees are probably lower, so he's like more low level. I don't know. He seems like a really nice guy. It just he's only willing to deal with the injury side of things and will collect injury and pain and suffering and whatever after all of the treatment is completed. And lost wages and all of that stuff after everything's completed. So I have to go through everything before I get any money. But he's not willing to help with the car, the damage to my car, the loss of my car. Basically, he's like, no, I don't deal with any of that. The insurance does that. And I'm like, okay, but the insurance won't talk to me. So they won't respond back to me. They're like, oh, I'll look into that when I talk to them. So, and then they never call me back, which is very frustrating. So I don't know what's going on with that. Anyway, so I'm in limbo, and my aunt was kind enough to point out that there's other options for me, other attorneys that I could go see, and someone that helped with my cousins when they had similar situations. And I was like, oh, okay. So I just think that was God telling me that I don't have to keep waiting on someone or waiting on other people when they're not being reliable or they're not helping, and that I have a right to stand up for myself and get what I need. And if I can't get it from one person, I can get it from someone else. And I remember sitting on my couch thinking, but he's going to feel bad if I'm like, wait a minute, I don't have to worry about how my attorney feels or how anybody else feels. I am doing what's best for me. I'm trying to take care of me in this situation. And I shouldn't be sitting here suffering and not having my needs met because I'm waiting for somebody else to do their job. And so, or I'm waiting for a whole bunch of things to happen first. And I know sometimes in life you have to wait for certain things to happen and, get all your ducks in a row, so to speak, but not everything has to be that way. And when there's a need that needs to be met, it can be met without having to jump through all the hoops, or it would be nice if they were met without having to jump through all the hoops. So it was just nice to know that there's other options out there that I can look into tomorrow. I didn't have time to today. And then, of course, I went to my writing group tonight, and it was fun. And I got some insights into the name. I know I was concerned about the name. If I published my song, what I would do it under. So I asked people in my writing group their opinion. So I got their opinion, and I like it. I tend to agree with it. So I think I'm going to go with that. And then after one of the people in the group, she told me she fixed her story from last month based on what I told her. And I was like, cool. I was like, you didn't make any comments on my book this time, on my story. And I was like, I didn't have any comments. I thought it was really good. I just got engrossed in what you were saying and sharing, and nothing stuck out that needed to be changed. And she's like, oh, good. I was like, I really hope I'm not. I mean, there was like 7 or 8 of us there tonight. I'm like, I'm not the only person with an opinion. But the person that gave me a ride to my writing group tonight told me that on the ride home, she said she thought it was amazing that I am so good. She's like, I'm not good at just coming up with feedback. I have to look at it and review it and read it a couple of times before I can give feedback. She's like, but you just are so good and right out there and doing that. And I was like, thank you. That is so sweet. And then I realized that she was saying that. I'm like, I only do that because I have issues. Because I have defects of my character. So apparently one of my defects is an asset to helping other people in their writing, which is amazing. I will explain that. I am not very good at reading comprehension. Every time I have done like the SAT test or done scores or whatever else like that, I have always been below average when it comes to reading comprehension. That is not an area that I am good at. I like to read. I love to read. But I do know that when I'm reading, sometimes my mind wanders and I miss things, or I will read something and something doesn't register in my brain. Like it read the words wrong, it mixed them up, something, but I'm like, I get confused and I have to go back and reread stuff, which makes me a slower reader because I have to go slow. Because if I try to go fast, I definitely miss stuff and I have no idea what's going on in the story. And if something doesn't make sense, it just kicks me out of the story and I'm like, I'm lost, because my brain likes to have things make sense. I'm very much one of those people that has to make sense. And if it doesn't make sense, I have a really hard time following along. I have a really hard time doing it. I don't get a lot of jokes because I'm like, it just doesn't make sense to me. Or I'm like, I get what you're saying, but I don't understand how it's funny. Like I don't get it. So I think in some ways I have a very logical brain like that. Not that everything I ever do in my life is logical, or not that anything I ever do in my life is logical. But if things don't make sense to me, I have a hard time understanding them. I have a hard time doing them. I have a hard, there has to be like a reason behind it, or it has to flow. Like in writing, it has to flow, it has to make sense, it has to connect. So when there's a gap, and in my own writing, I think I write gaps, I leave gaps, but it's because I know the story and I know the characters, so I don't realize I'm leaving gaps that other people have questions about. So I do the same thing as other writers. But when I'm in my writing group and people are reading out loud and I'm just listening to what they're saying, anytime, like sometimes they bring copies so I can write on and give back to them for feedback, but a lot of times it's just orally, they're just reading what they wrote and then I just give feedback on that. So anytime they read something or say something, if it knocks me out of the story, I'm like, I don't understand because I don't have the best reading comprehension. So my inability to comprehend everything that I read actually is a benefit when it comes to critiquing other people's work, because if something throws me out of the story, I spend more time focused on that one area saying, this doesn't make sense and this is why it doesn't make sense. So sometimes I miss kind of what they read for the next couple of paragraphs because that threw me out of the story, and I'm like, wait, I got to get back into what you're reading because you lost me over here. So I can make notes that it lost me, and then I can tell people, I'm like, you lost me, it sounds like this instead of this, and so I can make those corrections. And so apparently this one person in my group has come to really appreciate my comments and my questions and maybe the way that I explain things. So she's like, she's like, oh, I fixed it based on what you said. I'm like, cool, that's awesome. I am so glad that she appreciates my advice. But I also know that every writer has their own opinion and every reader has their own opinion. And one of my other writer friends that's there, and she's a really nice person, but I don't think she writes from a man's perspective very well. That's my personal opinion. But I think she's a really great writer, and I think she has really great stories, and I like her storylines. I just don't I don't think she does as well writing from a man's perspective as she does from a woman's perspective. I find her male's perspective to be a little bit confusing, or I wouldn't say like feminine, just not, I don't know. It just doesn't mesh for me. But I'm sure it meshes for her readers, and I'm sure it meshes for her, and it makes total sense to her. That's why she writes that way. That's her writing style, and that's perfectly okay. I'm not, my job isn't to critique someone else's writing style. My job is to, when I go to the writing groups, it's not to critique someone else's writing style. It's just to say if something doesn't make sense in their writing, like to ask questions, to get clarification about something, to give them ideas as to how to improve their story, their overall story, whether I like the story or not, or whether I like their style or not. So that's all I do. And some people take it to heart, and some people don't. They're like, okay, that's nice. But I mean, I do the same thing. I'm like, okay, thanks for the feedback, I'll fix that. Or I'm like, okay, I disagree, and I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing. Which is perfectly okay. Everyone's entitled to do that, which is why I love my 12-step program, Al-Anon, and they have that saying of take what you like and leave the rest. And I think it applies to writing. And when you let people beta read or critique your work and say, I like this, I don't like this, and this is what you can do to improve, and you can take it and say, yes, I agree with that, or you can say, nope, I like it just the way that it is. I like to try to take their advice and look at it and see if I can make my writing better, because I want to learn from them. I want to learn from these people that have been doing it much longer than I have, and I want to learn how to make my writing better. But I am just very grateful for someone else pointing out to me that they really appreciate the fact that I can just catch all of these, these things, and I have these comments to help people improve their writing. And I was like, she's like, you're just so good at that. And I was like, why am I good at that? And then God just gave me the answer like immediately, because I have a reading comprehension. If things don't make sense, it just throws me out of a story. So it's something that could be a negative in my life, and it made, school and reading and tests especially, if I took them so slowly, I didn't always finish tests when we took them, or I misunderstood the question and got the answers wrong, not because I didn't understand it's because I didn't understand the question, not because I didn't understand the material. So that was a big frustration for me with school. And I never got the help or assistance with that. I never got any kind of help or assistance when it came to things like that. So, but apparently it's turning into a blessing when it comes to writing and helping other people with their writing. So I think it's wonderful that God can take something that seems like it's a defect, something that's just not right or the same as everybody else's, that's different, then turn it into like a gift, turn it into a blessing, turn it into something that can help other people. And I just think that's amazing to see God doing that, to see him working in my life and saying, hey, I know you don't think you're good at this, but because you have this problem, you're able to help other people with their writing. And maybe it makes me, or will make me, a better writer myself. I'd like to think that it will, but I honestly know people think I have like gaps or things in my stories that don't make sense, and I have to go back and try to put things in there and make it make sense. So I know things make sense to me just like it makes sense to other people, and it's not always, doesn't always translate the same as what I have in my head. But I am grateful for the things that I'm learning and grateful for God in my life. And that is all I have, because I know I'm rambling and repeating myself, so I'm probably boring everybody watching these videos. just not stopping. I don't know what's wrong with me. If you like these videos, you can hit like, subscribe, share with someone else if you think they'll like it too. And I hope you have a great day full of gratitude and find ways to recognize God's hand in your life too.